Chapter 12. Live and Learn. With lots of effort, I mustered another spell to bring the sizable mechanical menace to its knees, as it blocked the way out of this underground prison. Knowing that energy cores inside of them is their bread and butter, made that a lot easier than I had anticipated. Still, my trotting became wobbly, and my head felt like a heavy sack of oatmeal. But I wasn't dropping. Not now, for Everypony's sake. The small herd of ponies we rescued looked at me in a mixture of disbelief, awe, worry, and a lot of relief on their faces. I must have looked like some zombie with blood running down my nose like that. That hunk of a pony from earlier must have gotten me good. "Where are you ponies headed now?" I looked at them, wondering if they were as lost in a way like I was once. No way out, stuck in the dark, and left to your own demise on a whim. A smaller red earth pony stallion with a yellow mane and a bandage around one of his hinds there spoke up. "I don't know. I lost my home and this road space took me, along with my daughter. Been like months or years down here." Poor fella. I could relate to him, especially with my own losses down the line.
"The Scottish Slicker attacked my caravan along with 3 other ponies. They didn't make it."
Another earth pony interrupted my train of thought. Purple mare, about the size of Compound, but with half an ear and some scars running along her side. Her green mane looked, well, like you'd expect anything to look after spending a long time down here.
"Damn!"
Scattershot was spooked as I was. Murmur elated. "What if they did have a home? A warm and homey place you could rebuild, protect, and work on. And you wouldn't have to worry about suckers like that." I once again was in this awkward situation where they all looked at me.
"What's going on in that mind of yours, huh?"
Compound nuzzled my side, careful, as we took a quick break next to the height of this monstrosity.
"Hold still.
She wiped the blood off my nose and kissed it.
There, sweetie. Gonna have to start bowing to you for saving my hide all the time."
Scattershot licked my cheek. Those two were enough to keep me conscious no matter what was going on sometimes. I tried staying strong. I had to be for Everypony's sake. I couldn't let them down. But I did think it was possible to build a settlement of sorts, a place that we could fortify, and that could sustain itself. I just had no clue what they'd think. Lots of nodding later. "Then I say we shall make such, Everypony," I told them as we trotted past the burning metal bits of this monstrosity. I did salvage one of its energy cells. With my plan set, this may come in handy, if we find some pony who can build a generator. Long shot, but really all I could think of. A few moments later, and a shotgun shot from Scattershot, we broke through a door, surfacing from a bunker, built into a hillside. It was dark, still. I was going to need a lot of rest, or some professional medical pony to get me patched up. My headache was getting worse. This place did look vaguely familiar, though. Plus, they couldn't have taken us far in the span of a few hours. A look onto one of my books, the map I carried everywhere, revealed we were 2 squares, probably an hour long of trot each, north of the Griffin camp, which I would have to draw into this map as well.
"Ain't looking too good, huh? Haven't done first aid in a while, but let me take a look."
I nodded, not realizing a smaller and younger colt, Pegasus, sky blue coat, and yellow mane, was looking at me like I had an apple in my face. He started carefully pushing his hoof against my head, then nose.
"Definitely a concussion there. Sir? Goddess?"
I was downright gobsmacked. Diagnosing this stuff with just the touch of his hoof? Talented little guy to say the least. Shorter than me and the girls, but filled with so much energy.
"New leaf is quite alright, thank you."
It was like a walking coffee mug. I nodded and grinned at him. Best I could, at least. I opened my wings a little bit. They did needed some preening after all. I wondered if he could open his own clinic if we could establish a settlement. and we still were reasonably far from the bowels and dangers that await those that get closer to Manhattan. Just as I was pondering about how exactly I was going to get wood and steel to build something out here, my saddlebag vibrated. I slipped it off and got my magical book out. Any pony who had gotten a page from it would be able to write into this sort of clone, no matter how far they were from it. Are you alive? I read words out loud, as ponies were getting a close look at themselves and inspecting the vicinity. Above that page, Compound's writing, from where the griffin locked her up yesterday. I had an idea who had written those words. Yeah, but lots of hurt ponies, and lost some equipment. We broke free from a bunker north of you, who was wealthy and a headhunter of sorts. That last sentence was scribbled there to entice any possible griffin on the other side of this book. What if we renovate this whole area like into a home and build buildings around from things inside, and maybe scavenge for stuff further out? As I thought it, I saw it a lot clearer in front of me. All those prison cells, with a lot of hoofwork, hammers and such. You could turn this into an underground base with vendors, sheltered homes, and maybe even underground farming, and ponies living together in harmony. But one dream at a time. My train of thought got derailed as writing appeared on the pages on my book. Wait up. I read out loud and closed it. I'ma go and find some plywood in there. Take some ponies with you in case you missed a baddie or two. I instructed them, and surprisingly enough, ponies were listening.
You and me. Let's get some of those doors and metal bars for structures. Let's go.
Every pony started splitting up. I counted a total of 17 ponies, along with me and the girls. Every pony started splitting up. Counted a total of 17 ponies, along with me and the girls. The doctor pony went to work on ponies left behind, and started inspecting ponies, including Scattershot, who had gotten a nail in her hoof by that ruffian.
Not a big wound. We could pull it out, but I got nothing to numb the pain.
Just go for it.
She winced slightly and held the affected hoof in his direction without looking.
Got his buck.
She squealed as he pulled it out with pretty much his bare teeth. And rather roughly so, but it was like the plaster paradox. The longer it took to remove it, the worse the feeling was. A rack from him pressed against her hoof later, and a
Hold that against there for a few minutes. I'll be back.
After, he moved on to Compound. This cult was a one-man clinic if I've ever seen one. Holy Celestia. He could probably cure potassium right out of a banana.
Just a slight flesh wound, nothing serious.
A few main pets yielded.
And now you, New Leaf. Some bed rest for 2 days and no magic for the rest of the day.
I wanted to complain, but didn't. My magic was like a general tool for pretty much everything.
Oh, we'll make sure he holds himself together. And if not, we can always tie him down and give him a reason to not get up. Right, Compound?
A wink from our gun-nut filly spoke more words than a book could ever read, but I wasn't sure if they meant what I thought they meant, and if they did, I must have spilled beans somewhere down the line, unknowingly. Oh well, maybe a reason to try and cast some magic after all and see what happened. But later during the day, of course. We watched the doc. I forgot to ask his name. He seemed to be in such a rush, in an admirable way. I hoped the ponies going in wouldn't get hurt. I couldn't let them get hurt. I wanted to help. But a hoof from Compound right on my nose
You're gonna stay put, I hear.
was enough to halt me from moving, more than a hoof's length. Fine. My ears folded backwards and I sighed. They were right. Things wouldn't get any better for me if I kept going. I was still sleepy as heck, though. And it still was night, but no bed or anything to rest in. I had my blanket, but no shelter. But sleep, after what happened, also didn't feel like an immediate option, at least not right away. Compound was hanging in there, looking glad we got out of there, and Scattershot held the rack from the doctor pony onto her hoof. You fillies mind if we go inside for a nap?
Yeah, a nap without waking up somewhere else would be a real treat. got an extra ounce of lead if someone tries to lay a hoof on us this time.
Scattershot growled as she was reloading her gun. Trotting back near the remains of this robot, I laid out the blanket. Scattershot tagged along, with a bandage on her hoof. That doctor must have changed it, without me paying attention much, really. My head hurt like a train had its way with it, and it was going to be like boxing shadows to sleep with this thing. I was almost thinking of booze as a remedy, but dismissed the thought quickly. I curled up onto the blanket while opening my wings and laying there, as I got a few loose feathers out.
A nalicorn feather, huh? Fancy!
Compound chuckled and grabbed some of them and put them into her own bag. For which purpose? I didn't know, but I thought maybe for a collectible of sorts. Which would make sense considering I was the only male alicorn for well over 2 centuries, and probably longer than I knew. Scattershot went further and put 2 of them into her mane and smirked and growled at me like she became some demon with royal blue horns, but then licked my nose.
You afraid yet?
I leaned in for a very close kiss and winked as I released. Oh, most certainly.
Never gotten to see some up close like this, to be fair.
Scattershot had her hoof running along the inside of my wings. I could barely hide a blush. Wings are sensitive, which they both didn't know, as it seemed, and I let them go.
Smells like the sky.
I felt Compound's nose in one of my wings and blushed beyond anything I could hide. Her breathing, her warmth and soft coat, my wings perched up, tail swishing, and I felt amazing. Started nuzzling Scattershot's mane, and after a while, comfiness and closeness ruled over the fear and pain of what was on. And we curled up together, one mare in each wing, and I was enjoying this. Probably as much as any cold under the sun would. I didn't know how long we slept, but some buzzing and mechanical sounds woke me.
What the ruckus?
Compound spoke my thought. Scattershot got her gun out without much speaking, still halfway cozied up in my wing. But some familiar faces quickly changed that stance. Griffins, our friends from the camp. But where were the other ponies at, who we rescued?
Ruffle my feathers, we finally found you guys. Didn't know someone was on your tail this bad. And we kinda owe you for what happened in our nesting place, so I figured we'd come out here.
It felt sleep was becoming a sparse resource, but the sun was sort of peeking out of the clouds, and the skies were tainted in that sweet red morning blaze. And we lived a nightmare beyond many to imagine. Snake, the leader of the griffin flock, seemed flustered but happy to see us, which was almost flip side of our first encounter.
So what if we lent some claws in building for a day, huh? Sounds dandy as a makeup.
Sure. I tried answering as good as I could despite my need for more sleep. A little bit of eye rubbing and packing our things together, we got up and outside. What awaited us there was enough to get me wide and awake in an instant. Ponies were at work out here, a small wooden foundation held down with weights. I recognized some of the bars from prison cells, used both for stability and as a way of seeing outside, and they used more wood for roofing, which they were putting together as we watched. I was speechless, but also amazed and overwhelmed. Was this it? The first spark of what it may take to reunite this land once more? And the whole spirit was contagious like rat flu.
Well, we could use some more space and maybe some instructions to set up defenses, you know.
I looked at Snake, and after a little bit of head tilting, he nodded finally, and looked over to the other 2 griffins that followed him out here.
Let's get to it!
I couldn't hold back tears at this point. This moment filled me with many emotions, like hope, pride to name a few.
Shucks. Let's help them, shall we?
I looked at the fillies, and so we decided sleep could be put off for at least until we had helped them out. My magic, I had to rest on, so I had to rely on my senses and scavenging abilities. I haven't had a chance at exploring that prison thoroughly anyway, and see what other valuables we could find. There had to have been some reason why this headhunter was all the way out here and surviving.
Any resources you need?
I looked at 2 colts who were closing off a roof.
Some screws and gears for a porch on the roof would be alright. And some wood for, the stairs.
With a few more mental notes, we had it inside. My head was still feeling like a blimp about to burst, but I felt ready to work. Trotting past the corpse of the dead sentry bot again, I looked at Compound, still having water in my eyes.
Aw, gonna be alright. You got more grit than half of New Appaloosa.
A little bit of smiling of me and agreeing with myself, I looked at both Scattershot and Compound and told them about the past, how it was stumbling around for 2 centuries before finding this. I also told them about how raiders came to be, and most importantly, what happened to Manhattan, where the end of the world we once knew came early, as this was the 3rd city hit with a mega spell in a short period. And of course how zebras were fought back then, and how he attempted to reason with the other alicorns to settle this through diplomacy, and failed to doing so since no one listened. Trotting down 2 corridors and taking a turn in between them, as I was executing story mode.
Well then, let's make a difference.
Scattershot added with a smile on her face like I've barely seen it. She was probably pumped as I was.
We alive, and well, the ponies who started this pony manure aren't. Survival of the fittest, ain't it?
That saying, she was right, even if it was a harsh statement. I believe it can be reunited, and well, seeing things like this kinda reinforces my statement. And who knows what friends we'll make. I looked into the sweet purple eyes of her.
Well, I'm willing to bet a cider. If they saw the world now, they'd see different.
Our trot came to a halt as we started to find cells. Ponies had been here, taking some of the bars, but I was willing to bet there was more in one of them. Maybe we'd find the office of this headhunter along the way. Most cells were empty. I found a small bucket in one of them, but the red, fleshy, and smelly contents of what looked to be the remains of some pony quickly deterred me from picking it up. Or did it? I spilled the bucket by pushing it over with one of my fronts to see if there was anything valuable in it, getting my hoof stained in red stuff. But my over-the-top curiosity remained unsatisfied.
I bet you those fancy pants from before the war wouldn't do that. Maybe it's like destiny kind of thing you're here.
Who knew? But following this path brought us to a dead end with nothing more. So we turned around, looking at the other side in the cells there. Under one of the doors, a wooden crate, but also empty. The inner treasure-finding leaf was hyped to find some jackpot down here. How about a 200-year rewind button and taking my fillies with me, or some sweet cider? We got to a crossway. Having come from the right, we decided to take the left. While we were trotting, my eyes scanned the cells around like a robot. Scattershot took the left cells, while we and Scattershot were taking the right. A sudden clank and ruckus got me almost jump-scared. But looking to my right, I found Scattershot looking at me, with the handle of a bucket in her mouth. Screws and nails in it. That answered the question as to where they found the nails they put inside of her.
Got it! Good on you, girl.
Compound poked her side and smirked. You should both be called adorable, you know. I told them and got a stuck-out tongue and some giggles.
You two more, though.
Hey! We protested in unison. The good moods from helping these ponies and spending time with another felt like it could overshadow anything today. The cells here were kinda empty, but the end of the hallway had a surprise. An iron door, unopened, but with a lock. Big and heavy one.
How about this?
Scattershot got some yellow bottle out and poured its contents onto the padlock. Chunks of it started to crumble down eventually, like it was always a pile of metal scrap. The door opened slowly but heavily. Inside was a whole bunch of small boxes. I gasped as it dawned to me. This had to have been where all the valuables of ponies that had already perished here had have been. As well as some other stuff, a storage of sorts. But the biggest eye-opener was a blue sparkly gem on a shelf at the top. Was this what I think it was? I was thinking of stretching up, all the way, to grab it, but after careful thinking of my options, I levitated it down from the shelf. against doctor's warnings. It was only a little levitation. I felt a hoof from Compound on my back the second I did.
I saw that. Did you, Scattershot? Uh-huh. Caught right in the open, partner.
They smirked at another, but I gulped, hoping for something amazing. But my sneaking suspicions about this gem seemed to be confirmed. An untampered water talisman, not broken or anything. It wouldn't have been a far stretch that some vault dweller ended up here, and ended here for good with this in tow. This was almost leaf logic in a way, as I dubbed it. That uncanny, unconventional, and logic-defying way of getting something rare and awesome beyond belief that ensures survival. Oh well, but I had an idea here. This would be able to help any settlement to sustain itself water-wise for ages, if done correctly. And the ponies here would love it, and would be willing to defend a place that had virtually infinite clean water. But I had to find a way to make sure it didn't corrupt through getting damaged. Without much inspection, me and Compound brought up 2 boxes each onto our back, and Scattershot, being the earth pony she was, got like 6 of them, and was more concerned of them falling over than lifting them. Some extensive backtracking later and passing the sentry bot for the 4th time today, we got back out, and it was like an army of workers. 2 shacks so far. Griffins and ponies alike were working together.
So, we put things together and such, but we may make a second flight if we got like some leftover mattresses. They'll make us even, right?
I nodded, but quickly had another deal in mind to keep those griffins hooked. Also, this settlement will have clean and purified water, so if you want some, drop on by. He looked at me with his head tilting, but when I revealed my treasure after setting things down, his beak was open like a barred knife.
We gotta use flippin' water purifiers and coal fire and everything for it. We'll keep this in mind, I suppose.
He quickly got his crew together and took off. All I could think of is sleep again, but this time seemed like we could sleep under a roof. That was indeed our own in a way. I got the water talisman and slipped it into my saddlebag. I was going to figure out some way to foolproof this thing. With clean water being no problem, and some ponies being able to farm. 'Cause some ponies were earth ponies and all. This place felt set. I yawned very loudly.
Well, you said it, and I thought it.
Scattershot admitted, putting down her boxes in front of one of the shacks. Ponies were constructing things on the other. A familiar face came up to us. Just wanted to thank you again for getting us out and bucking them up. The earth pony from earlier. I grinned at him. You're welcome, and he ate one of my strongest spells to the face. I felt weirdly proud at it.
Yeah, there's mushy pony hunk in his place now.
Compound went into detail, and Scattershot tried chuckling, but it quickly turned into a very loud yawn. Tired? Well, I'd say you deserve more than a nephew tree. We'll keep an eye out. He grinned and trotted to the other ponies while me and the 2 girls went inside and got cozy again. With us being tiresome and beat up as we were, along with my blanket and another's cuddly company, it didn't take long for us to fall asleep. Sinking my nose into Scattershot's mane, which smelt like a flower from way back that I remember, I fell to the warrior, whose name is Sleep.